Talk Show is brought to you by Health Plans, your Medicare plans, insurance solutions, and resource agency. We have a variety of plans and products that fit your needs, benefit requirements, and budget, with many low or no-cost premium plans, zero co-pays, and much more. Our licensed benefits advisor's priority is your health and well-being. Call us today and book your no-obligation consultation. 1-929-367-5269.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, the NBC network, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, new topic. Not so much new. I've covered this in the past, but I do have a different guest that will give us a different angle on this particular topic. And she is a registered therapist, nutritional therapist. And this is going to be discussing the menopause and a few other things, lifestyles, and how to be best going through the menopause. So ladies, you're in for a treat. So with me today, all the way from Sweden, Alison, Bladh, and I'm going to say it's there's an H there. So just to be clear. So Alison, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. It's lovely to be here today talking to you about such an important subject, really.
Yes, and it is, and you know, some people may be like, well, you're a guy and you're talking about this. Yeah, I mean, there are guys doctors, there are guys nurses, and there are people that do this to enlighten people and bring this. By the way, I just wanted to highlight this because menopause is not just affecting women; they affect, you know, the people in their lives, and so usually there's men out there, whether they're kids, their parents, their husbands, whatever, significant others. So it's important; it touches on everyone. But really, the mission here is to enlighten people in general and educate them. So, Alison, you're here to tell us a little bit about how people can live a better life. You know, I know you do therapy and coaching, and you help people in a better to change their lifestyle, to address, you know, this transitional phase of life, right? But before we go there, always would like to start with your background and how you got into this whole thing, nutrition, therapy, and of course, why you specialize in menopause and how to help people ultimately.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Okay, well, my journey really started, I worked as an esthetician initially, working with women's skin health and specifically women that were going through perimenopause and menopause, because that, amongst many other things, that can really affect your skin and you can develop acne and pigmentation and many other things. So I worked as an esthetician and I very soon came to realize that nutrition and lifestyle was a huge part of the picture, you know, putting all these pieces together to help these women with their skin. It wasn't just about treatments and applying products to the skin. A lot of it came from within. So that's when I went back to university and studied nutritional therapy, nutritional science. And ever since then, I've been working on a one-to-one basis with one-to-one programs for menopause or perimenopausal women, because also when I was growing up, you know, I saw all the women in my life, like my mother, my grandmother. Menopause wasn't spoken about, and they really suffered. It was kind of, you know, stiff upper lip, just get on with it. In a way, it was a subject that women didn't want to talk about. It was a bit embarrassing in a way that you would talk about this, and you know, it's still got a stigma attached to it. It's getting better. I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Europe there's a bit of a menopause revolution going on, so it is becoming better because women want the support, and it can be a really tough time. So I've always been fascinated in hormones as well. I think hormones they just have such a huge effect on the body, you know, and what you eat and what you do and your lifestyle and also your mindset has a huge, you know, plays a huge part in how you get through this perimenopause or menopause, because there are different stages to this time period in a woman's life. And some people really have difficulties and some women just glide through it and don't really feel anything. So it's very, very individual. So now I like I say, work on one-to-one basis with my clients, really getting to the root cause of what is going on. I work with the functional medicine model, which means that you really look at the whole person. You don't just look at a symptom. You really get down to what is going on with them and why that is. You also do, which I find fascinating, something called a timeline, where you go back from when they were born and you look at all the things that have happened in their lives, whether it's trauma or surgery or weight loss, medication, it can be anything. And normally you can just see how these sort of traumas and events in people's lives connect to the development of migraines, for example, or anxiety or weight gain. It's fascinating how these triggers and things affect how we are long term. And it I think with menopause, perimenopause and menopause, it all, as we get older as women, how you've lived your life tends to come out when you get older. You can get away with it when you're younger, but as you get older, you tend to think, whether you've got pigmentation on your skin or you're just feeling generally fatigued, it all catches up with you in the end. So it's time to look after yourself. So I'm very passionate about helping this specific group of women with nutritional therapy, lifestyle modifications, and mindset is a huge key as well in that.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's a pretty deep stuff. I mean, it's a comprehensive definition of your work here, and we're gonna break down some of the. And you mentioned a couple of things that are worth actually highlighting first. One is, I think before we can even go further, is there a way? I mean, potentially, I'd like you to, although some people may know what menopause is, if we can break that down. I know you mentioned hormones and we mentioned age, and so we would like to get just a closer look at the definition of what that means, just for people, whether they understand it, because a lot of people have this, I guess, menopause happens at 50 or 55, and it's not really a 1 year thing or stuff. So just if we can bring back people to the original factor of menopause. And then I'd like to also talk about what you mentioned about the history that leads to it, and to your point, the stigma that you actually discussed a minute ago, which basically, you're right, it is still a topic where it's almost like taboo, because it's almost highlighting age. It's like almost a transitional age, which we shouldn't be thinking about that. You live your life in these stages and you enjoy every one of them. And this is just a transition in your body or change in your body that's going to happen. But at the same time, it shouldn't be like, oh my God, this is like, we can't talk about it because it's reminding of age and stuff. So let's talk about that, because I'm sure you work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's great that you asked that about menopause, because, there's so many people that don't really understand the stages and what is going on with the body. And a lot of women, when they come into what we call perimenopause, which is the beginning, where your hormones are fluctuating, the symptoms that you may develop, are quite similar to just being generally stressed and overworked. And so a lot of women don't actually relate it to the fact that they might be coming into menopause. So the stages are, the first one, it's called perimenopause. And this is like the stage before you actually go into menopause. And on average, this starts at the age of 45. It varies considerably depending on the person, but roughly 45. And this is really where your body, your hormone levels start to decline, but they fluctuate a lot. So, 1 month your estrogen can be high, your progesterone can be low, and then the next month. So it's like a bit like a roller coaster. And that's what stimulates all these symptoms. And again, it's very individual. I mean, the most common one that most people think of is the hot flashes, anxiety, mood swings, weight gain. The list goes on. There's about 40 different symptoms that you can develop during perimenopause. So this is the fluctuation, especially the decline in the hormones. And then you have the stage which is actually called menopause. And when you think of the name menopause, that's really what it is. I mean, meno is menstruation, and pause is the stopping of menstruation. menopause is basically when you haven't had a period, you haven't menstruated for a year, a whole year in a row. If you haven't had a period for 8 months and then you have one, then you're not in menopause, you're still in perimenopause. So when you haven't menstruated for a year, you are then in menopause. And then all the time after menopause, then we're in what we call post-menopause. And I mean, women, we're living much longer than we used to. So the majority of women can have 30 years left of their lives in post-menopause. So, it's crucial that you look after yourself and you understand what's happening with your body and get the support and the help you need, because estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, are really important for our overall health. So to have 30 years or maybe even more of quality life, you really need to understand, what is going on. So that's perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause are the three stages of menopause. And then your other question asks you about the stigma. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you say, it's just not very glamorous, is it? It's kind of, I think it's the fact that you're no longer fertile, and you're becoming older, and you maybe feel, what am I going to do now? What's left for me? It's ridiculous, really, isn't it? Because you think like puberty for women, that's all talked about and that's fine, and we all know about that. And then, another big hormonal event is pregnancy for women, which is, and then kind of menopause is another big hormonal event, but it's certainly not talked about as much as it should be. And women aren't getting the help that they need. I mean, the majority of women, when they go to their doctor, come away feeling very, they don't feel like that they've got the help that they need. But it is getting better. It's just getting the word out there and making women realize that, menopause is a totally natural process, but you really don't have to suffer. That there are so many things that you can do. But like I said about my grandmother and my mother, it was you certainly didn't mention it. It was absolutely forbidden to talk about anything to do with menopause. I mean, even the word menopause, I think then people certainly didn't understand what it was, which is strange, really, isn't it? Because it's a big event and every single woman will go through it.
Well, it is, and it sounds like, traditionally it's been like almost like, oh my God, it's the end of the line. It's like, that's it, I'm done, as a woman, right? And the fear usually is you talked about fertile, right? It's oh, I can't have kids anymore, and recently, I mean, in recent years, marriage is much later, and so or just having kids is much later these days. So that time frame is almost crucial. People are almost in a race to try to get children before they get to it. So there's a little bit of awareness to it, but at the same time, no one wants to talk about it. It's difficult, and you're right. You go to the doctor, you might get okay, well, I think you're going through menopause, but what's the ramifications, what the effect that happens when you hear that? Is there anything that people can be walking away with that can help them face it? And I think that's the problem. So they just like, oh my God, I got bad news, this is it for me, whatever. And then the end. So now to your point, stress begins and everything, and it's not helping because everything is already changing, and now you add to it another level of anxiety. It's not good.
No, it all adds up, doesn't it? If you're not getting the support, and if you don't really, I always say to my clients, knowledge, understand what is happening, because knowledge is power. And when you go to your doctor, don't settle when they just say, oh, you're fine, your hot flushes, that's part of the stage of life you're going through. Don't settle for that, because there are many things, there's many things that you can do to make yourself feel better. And one thing that I find really fascinating as well is that I think it's more in the Western world that we look at menopause with this, let's not talk about it, brush it under the carpet, because in research, when they've looked at more like, like the blue zones and more tribal zones, when women become older and they go through menopause, they become like the hierarchy of the tribe. They're so wise, and people really respect and look up to them and want their knowledge. which is
Oracles.
true, really, isn't it? I mean, I think elephants as well. They always have the older female as the leader of the tribe, and killer whales. This is I find this interesting as well. There's not many mammals that go through menopause apart from humans, and killer whales. And when the female is around 45, because they live till they're quite old whales, and goes through menopause, she then becomes the leader of the pod, like the pod of whales, and they can have like 30, 40 of these killer whales in a pod because she's so wise and got so much knowledge. I mean, that's how we should think of it, because older women are amazing. I mean, we have so much knowledge, and we've seen so much and been through so much in our lives. We should be celebrated.
Well, thank you for bringing that, because that is an important piece. People often think about age as sometimes a problem as you age, right? But it's not. Every stage we first of all, I always say this: people live in long enough to hit these milestones, because some people unfortunately don't make it to those milestones. And to your point, the wisdom factor doesn't happen early on. Unfortunately, when you're younger, you don't want to listen to anybody. You just want to figure it out yourself. And I mean, I have teenagers, and I can tell you, and I have, my oldest son is in the 20s, and they just don't. They want to discover the world. And no matter what you tell them, you're wrong. They're right, right? So unfortunately, that wisdom starts hitting a little bit later, and then by that time, when you think that you're wise, it's kind of like, oh, what happened to my half a century? Or at least the last 4 decades are gone. And so, but most people don't see that value. And you're right. With age comes wisdom, and you see the world differently, and you appreciate a lot more things in life, and you do want to live, a healthier life, so you can enjoy the next, few decades. And as long as you live, I work with the senior, population, and because I work in the Medicare space, which is 65 and over most of the time, and so I see people at all stages of their lives having a great time. I mean, people in the 70s, 80s, even 90s, they're really enjoying their life, being social. They're going out there and they live. Now, they're all going through different things. I mean, some of these folks have, illnesses and some serious, illnesses even, but they still live their life, right? And so I think the highlight is important to say that life is precious, and as long as we live, we have to enjoy every moment of it. And women, I mean, first of all, pillars of society, right? We need every woman out there healthy and happy, and that's it. And again, there is no person that cannot say that they don't have women around their realm. Everybody interacts with ladies and women, and whether, like, again, I have my daughter, I have my mom, I have my wife, I have my cousins, I have colleagues, and their interaction is there, and you want to support that. I mean, you always have to support. And by the way, this is not about male or female. I mean, everybody should support each other to a degree to keep people motivated, healthier, and really in the right mindset. And you mentioned mindset earlier. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But those are the big deals, big elements to really cover, because age is, as we say as a joke, is a number. The physiology or the anatomy of the body, that's different. It's just going to go through its phases. Doesn't matter. I mean, you get old, it's just part of life. You can't stop that. Unfortunately, you can maybe reduce it to a degree, but you can't stop it. It's how you think about it is the key. I have a friend, he's my mentor, and he told me one time, there's a point in life, we just have to make a decision. Do you want to live with what you have and enjoy the life, or you just kind of like stress up and then you collapse on yourself, and then you think that the age is taking you over, and that's it. You want to live, as long as, like I always say, we live until we don't live, anymore. So enjoy enjoy all of it. There's no reason not to. And the best way to enjoy it is in a healthy, fit body, mindset, the whole work, right? A good, equilibrium between everything, spirit, energy, everything has to apply. Now, the body is going to change. They're going to transform. Hormones and stuff are always going to shift. You mentioned something earlier about the history of a person, and I want to go back to that just for a brief minute, because some people may have thyroid problems. Genetics, can affect, as you mentioned. So, what is the impact of that? I mean, obviously there is an impact. Is there a relationship? For example, someone who has hyperthyroid or hypo, does that affect actually the menopause differently, or it's irrelevant?
No, I mean, thyroid health, absolutely. That is crucial. And that is something when I work with clients, when I initially start working with them, we would always look at that, because thyroid health, as you come into, one, it's more common in women to have thyroid problems. And two, it becomes even more common when you go through perimenopause and menopause, specifically hypothyroidism, which is where your thyroid doesn't produce enough of the thyroid hormones. And I mean, your thyroid is like the engine of your body. It controls your metabolism. So if that starts slowing down and not producing the hormones that you need, it affects everything. So that really is absolutely a crucial thing to look at in menopausal, perimenopausal health, because it's also that the thyroid, some of the classic symptoms of hypothyroidism are very similar to menopausal symptoms. So it sometimes can get missed because you just think, oh, it's down to menopause, fatigue, weight gain, they're very typical symptoms of menopause, but they're also very typical to thyroid health. And you see in studies that the increase in thyroid problems goes up quite a lot with women as we get older. So that absolutely is a crucial thing. There's certain things that you really have to take care of and look after a little bit more as you come into this time period in your life.
So let's talk about, you mentioned symptoms. Is there a list of specific symptoms that people should at least be aware of in perimenopause? And then ultimately the menopause itself, as you said, when you have 12 months consecutive without any menses. But the prior phase is really where it's iffy, because to your point, anything can be, thyroid can be a problem and it can appear the same. So what is the specific thing that that women can be looking forward to, and at what stage they should start really being aware of?
Perimenopause on average starts at 45, but I've seen ladies where it starts at 40, 41, or it starts at 50. So it's really very individual. But the most common, one of the most common symptoms is hot flashes. This is like a wave of heat that all of a sudden just engulfs your body, and you can start sweating. That is a very common symptom. A lot of ladies mention weight gain. All of a sudden you can start, even if you're not doing anything different, you're eating healthy and exercising, but you notice that you predominantly around the abdomen area, that's a very common symptom. Sleep problems, and sleep that is due to, one of the reasons is because you can have night sweats. So you can wake up in the night and feel really hot and sweaty, and that obviously keeps you awake. Estrogen it's an amazing hormone, and it affects absolutely everything, because we have estrogen receptors in virtually every part of our body. So it's not so surprising when those levels start to decline that it affects so many things. Brain fog, lack of concentration, that's a huge thing. And it's really tough for some women, because all of a sudden you can be talking, or you can be think, I'm going into a room to get something, you just go completely blank. And it's to do with, the estrogen, you have estrogen receptors in your brain. But that those symptoms are quite scary, because a lot of women, what's going on? I can't remember anything. Am I going to be getting dementia? That's why it's so important that you talk to someone and get the right information and help that you need. But lack of concentration, anxiety is a big. All of a sudden, you find you get very anxious over things that you didn't before, and also self-confidence. So estrogen is responsible for so many things, and progesterone. It isn't just estrogen, and testosterone, which women need as well, that tends to naturally decline as we get older. So that's more of a natural, thing that happens as we get older. But that we don't really talk about that so much in women's health. We tend to think more of men's health.
True.
There's so many symptoms. You can have like itchy skin, dry skin, hair loss. Every tooth problems,
Well, Alison, you mentioned earlier you started as esthetician, and you noticed there were skin issues and things like that. So that's news. Actually, I wouldn't have put one and one together. I mean, considering, I mean, now it's been clear based on your information that there is a relationship to that skin, the look, and all the stuff. But I did want to, something you mentioned about, people get to it, they're scared, they don't know when it happens, at least, and to your point, it's a pretty large, time frame. It could start, to your point, from the 40s to 50s. But the metabolism typically, winds down slowly every decade, right? I mean, every year that goes by, your metabolism is down. Now, that's in general terms. I mean, that's just the whole system. This is a more like a hyper change and shift that is happening in a very specified time frame. It's not, I mean, obviously progression happens every stage of life, but and the metabolism will continue declining until the end. But and again, I'm not going to say that, because and we're going to talk about nutrition, mindset, and lifestyles that can make a booster in all these directions here. But the fact is, people, as age progresses, the metabolism is kind of like, it's the age goes up, the metabolism goes down. That's typically the formula, unless you kind of reinforce the metabolism levels and change some stuff in your lifestyle, right? But this is, first of all, is there I guess the hormones and the changes in the menopause do affect the metabolism, or vice versa, right?
Yeah, they do. I mean, the estrogen and the decline in hormones affects like the integrity of your gut, and it also affects metabolic processes. The gut and the microbiome, which is your gut bacteria. There's research saying that we need estrogen for the integrity of the gut. So that obviously has effects on your metabolism. So there's many, the gut, we tend to forget our gut health, but that is so crucial. And decline in estrogen really affects that quite a lot, really. A lot of women find that they get constipated, and the gut, the whole process of the gut kind of just slows down a bit. So, it's really important that you introduce foods that will help that. And also insulin, which is the hormone that helps our body utilize sugar, energy. So when you eat carbohydrates, specifically refined carbohydrates, you will get a peak in insulin. So insulin is like the key to the cell that opens up the cell, that allows you to take in the glucose, the energy, and allows your body to utilize it. But what can happen in menopause is that the cell becomes less sensitive to estrogen. So we don't react in the same way. And this can lead to insulin resistance, which, in the long term, if you leave insulin resistance, it can lead to diabetes too. So, you really, there's just things you need to be aware of as a woman during this time, that really think about what you're eating. And, because if you've constantly got high blood sugar levels, that isn't good for your metabolism, isn't really good for anything. For weight gain, for anxiety, and if you carry on eating all these refined, processed, sugary foods, then you're not going to be doing yourself any favors. You really want to eat like blood sugar balancing foods, whole foods, basically, just not a food that comes in a packet with 50 ingredients. You just want a whole food that you can see. That is a piece of broccoli, that is a chicken.
Well, thanks, Ed. It's amazing what you said about the insulin and the could lead to diabetes. I mean, true story. I mean, I never thought about it until this minute when you were saying it. My mom, actually, the same year where menopause happened, was actually the year she got diabetes. I never thought of anything of that, but it's literally the same time. Because I mean, I kind of, it just hit me like because I was aware of all the changes that were happening, and then it happens that actually that's the year that we moved to the U.S. so it's a very unique year for me, but it was exactly at the time where her diabetes kicked off. And it's amazing that you don't think about the two until you start hearing something like this, where you understand like how the body has actually functioned, because it was nothing, and then all of a sudden her body is just not operating the same way. And again, to your point, culturally and stuff like that, this is not a discussion that was happening. So, you don't even know what to do. Now, you mentioned some very powerful stuff about nutrition. I think that's our segue, perfect timing now is let's discuss that. I mean, you mentioned something about gut health. You mentioned something about, the sugars and the carbs and the type of foods. I mean, whole food versus, refined stuff or packaged stuff. That is a big, that is a problem in today's society. I mean, we've gone away from really eating farm and stuff, and the industries are heavy. And you can go, like, I mean, I had this discussion with my son few months back, and we were just having this discussion about like how the world changed back in the days. 100 years ago, you didn't have the food that you have in the supermarket today. There were a few, areas, and that's about it. Now you can go like, hundreds and thousands of styles of every single type of food, right? And they all taste good, and it's a lot of sugar, a lot of sodium and stuff. So, and even even the dairy sections, whatever you pick, it's like, multitudes of fruits and vegetables in a different package, not real. They look the same, but they taste the same, but they could be like, to your point, 15 ingredients in them, half of them you cannot pronounce. So that's a challenge that we have today. And in a lot of areas, you don't have like for example, where I am right now, this is like we can go peach picking and apple picking and strawberries, and then it's good. Tomatoes are happening because we are close to farms. But that's only a small time frame. The rest, you just have to rely on your purchases at a supermarket. And yeah, there is a tendency now that there's more places where you can purchase whole food. I mean, or even big franchises that have like whole food stuff. But what are some of the key things that you would, that you actually recommend throughout practice, for women that are just about to get into the perimenopause and or through and obviously post, like what are some of the things in terms of, nutrition that you recommend specifically, exercise maybe also, and just, we can talk about that as a brief, because I think that's important, and that will touch on the lifestyles. So what would be those key elements that you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there, and I can get very passionate or worked up about the toxic food environment that we live in, because it is, it's responsible, or not solely responsible, but the obesity epidemic that's happening in the world, and people are just ill, they're sick, aren't they, with chronic diseases, and our bodies weren't made to eat all this processed food with loads of different ingredients and sugar, and it's terrible for health, and it is really, really tough, isn't it, because of the food environment. I mean, no matter where you go, you've got all this food in front of you, whether it's to go and to the DIY shop or whatever. It's there in front of you all the time. We're only human, aren't we? We can't always resist.
Well, it's becoming culture. I mean, it's for example, the new generation. I have fights with my kids all the time. Well, fights, I mean, not physical fights, but we argue about this all the time. And they actually don't like me because I don't purchase some of the stuff that they want and bring it to the home, because, that's the only way for me to prevent it. Because no matter what they buy, and it's becoming so attractive, like there are certain foods that they want because that's the tradition. That's what the media is portraying on TV. There's a lot of marketing that's happening, and it just basically, that's just a trend. I want to have some of this. That's what breakfast should look like, and we don't have, again, to your point, back in the days, food were natural, and now there's so many things that are available and they're not really healthy for you. And it's a challenge. It's a big challenge. The body is just, to your point, not able to figure out all this, and that's why we have so many diseases that we didn't have maybe years ago. Or just half a century ago, we didn't have the stuff we have today.
No, exactly. And we're seeing it, aren't we? I mean, it's you see how it's affecting us as humans. And it's not easy. And, going back to your question about menopause, I think what you have to think about with nutrition is that you just have to, it doesn't have to be difficult. We're talking about all the processed foods in supermarkets and shops and everything. But it's not all processed. If you stay I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Europe, if you stay to like the outer edge of the store, that's where all the like the more healthy non-refined foods are, the vegetables, the fruit, the meat, if you eat meat, and the other products. But what you need to think about is just looking after yourself that little bit more, and try to buy whole foods, try to avoid processed foods. Even if you just do that one thing, you will start feeling better. If you, okay, I'm realistic. You can't say to someone to avoid processed foods completely, but if you really try to minimize the amount of processed foods that you eat, and don't have them in the house, exactly what you were saying, that, don't have them there. If you have them there, then you're tempted, aren't you? If you've got lots of sweets and chocolates and candy in the cupboard, then it's there and you will eat it. If you don't have it there, it's very rare you'll actually get in the car and drive to the shop and buy it. But it's fascinating how our brain works, because the brain, we love sugar, and we love that combination of sugar and fat and salt. And if you know that you've got a lovely packet of biscuits in the cupboard that's got all that, your brain, that craving will start. But if you don't even have it in the house, then it helps. So try to avoid processed foods.
Out of sight, out of mind, huh?
yeah, exactly. And one thing that I really find with my clients is that, when you come up to menopausal or perimenopausal age, you can't get away with what you did when you were in your 20s or 30s. And alcohol really doesn't help your menopausal symptoms. I mean, it's been shown in studies that even just a glass of wine, a couple of glasses of wine in the evening, can trigger off hot flashes. It can stop you sleeping. And the majority of my clients, when they've stopped drinking alcohol, even just doing that, they feel so much better. And I'm not saying that you have to completely stop, but maybe just be more mindful. If you do have a couple of glasses of wine in the evening, just try for a week or 2 weeks to cut that out and see how you feel, because it really doesn't do you any favors when you're going through this time period in your life, perimenopause, menopause and postmenopause. It's everything in moderation. So alcohol is a key thing, and also what you drink. Don't drink sugar. We tend to think of food, don't we? But some of the energy drinks and the soda, it's just, it's terrible. It's quite interesting, because some of the like well-known energy drinks have actually been banned in, I have to think now, Denmark, France and Norway don't allow a certain energy drink because they're unsure of the health effects, because of the high percentage of caffeine in them and sugar. So energy drinks, not something I would recommend. You can get your energy in other ways from nuts and seeds, and lots of really wholesome foods. So limiting alcohol, avoiding processed foods. The diet that always comes up best in research that is very good for menopausal women, or good for general health, is the Mediterranean style diet. And many people say, well, what does that actually mean? I don't live near the Mediterranean. How can I do that? But it's a very easy diet to follow. It's basically nuts, seeds, legumes, which is all your beans and peas and vegetables, etc. Your green, your vegetables, fish, small amount of poultry, so your white meats, red meat occasionally, and all your wonderful fats like your olive oil, avocados, coconut oil. There's wonderful oils in nuts and seeds. So the Mediterranean style diet is actually a very good basis of how you prepare your meals and how you eat. And like I say, it really doesn't have to be difficult. Even if you don't want to spend hours in the kitchen, if you just, for example, if you eat meat, if you buy a chicken, you roast that chicken and you have that in the fridge, and you have some nice salad, you maybe have some whole grain rice, and you've got that there. You can have a chicken breast with salad and some rice in the evenings, because the majority of people, I find it's time is a big issue as well. They need something there in the fridge that they could just take out and eat. They haven't got time in the evenings, they're busy working. Mediterranean style diet. And going back to gut health, it's very important to eat fermented foods. And there's been so much research done on the microbiome now in the gut, our gut bacteria. So we're really starting to understand how crucial that is for health. And with the estrogen levels declining, that can affect the microbiome, which really has like a knock-on effect on everything in digestion, even our mental health, our brain health is affected by the microbiome. So all your lovely, what we call probiotic foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, all your pickled vegetables, they contain all these wonderful good bacteria. So that's really crucial for gut health. And then fiber, which again, that's something that we all hear about, but it's very rare that we actually eat the amount of fiber that we should be eating. You should be eating at least 30 grams of fiber a day. And, fiber comes from vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts and seeds. So I think you just have to have an awareness of what is on your plate. You do not just filling it full of potatoes, and there's nothing wrong with potatoes, but you need a balance on the plate. You should have protein, fat, and carbohydrates, like whole grain carbohydrates, and there should be a balance of how your plate looks, not just a plate full of refined carbohydrates. And protein is a huge thing for women in menopause, because we need protein. We tend to lose muscle mass, women, as we get older, so you really need that protein to help keep your muscles strong and to help keep your body strong. And protein, again, is something that we don't eat enough of. You should really try and eat a palm size of protein with every meal, and protein such as chicken, fish, soya products if you don't eat meat. So it's getting that balance. And I'm healthy fats I always talk to, because you need them for your hormones and health when we get, well, in general, but especially as we go into menopause. And fat is a tricky one with people, because as soon as you say the word fat, they automatically think, what? No, I'm not eating fat because I'll put weight on. There's such a, going back to stigmas, there's such a stigma attached to fat, which comes from the low fat, high carbohydrates, doesn't it? That in when was that, the 70s, when the whole world decided that we shouldn't eat fat, so it was taken out of everything, and now we've suddenly decided that we do need fat, but it's the type of fat, it's what the fat is that you're eating is really crucial. So healthy fats, to get your omega-3 oils, which are crucial, which can come from oily fish. And carbohydrates from vegetables, starchy vegetables. Really try to get rid of all the real refined carbohydrates, because they just shoot your blood sugar up and just make you feel terrible, really. So there's so many things. I could talk about nutrition for hours.
I know. Well, you've summarized a lot of it. I mean, again, less than 5 minutes. I think you covered almost every type of good food that you can have, and bad stuff that you don't have to have. But you also mentioned a couple of elements, right? You mentioned Mediterranean diet. You're right. Not everybody lives around the Mediterranean, but it's the type of food that you take. But also, if you look at it culturally, depending where you sit on this globe, the cultures are different, obviously, and the food diets and the diets in general are different. And I can just by just virtual snapshot, Europeans, for example, their food style is a little different, for example, from American diet, right? It's we're just extreme when it comes to diet. We just eat everything like, fast food and so on and so forth. Again, when I say this, it's a generalization, but for the most part, that is a problem that we have in the US, much bigger, I think, than most of the rest of the world. But even in Europe, it's getting there, to your point. I mean, there are some of that, but there's also, and we're going to talk about lifestyle shortly, but there is different ways of how to live your life, to your point, besides, being aware of what you take and what you don't take, and specifically for women health here. But at the end of the day, the food, like the cooking, just a simple thing, right? A lot of people still cook home in a lot of the different places in the world. And for example, in some more westernized, civilizations, I guess, there's more eating out and stuff like that. So believe it or not, when we go to restaurants, most of these restaurants buy canned stuff that they use and process in your meal. You can go to like, for example, here in the States, we have like Restaurant Depot, right? And that's where the restaurants get most of their stuff that they serve you in their restaurant. And when you go shop, it's really just canned stuff or packed stuff that's already ready, and they just kind of like, make it in a delicious formula and process it in a plate for you, as opposed to you going getting those vegetables and combination of things and putting them onto your plate, and cook them slowly and so on and so forth. So that's a change. I think the cultures themselves make a difference. For example, in Europe or Mediterranean and other parts, people have a different lifestyle, and we're going to talk about that now. And then ultimately, you mentioned about the gut health, and the probiotics, for example, is a big deal. Not so many people actually are eager to use it. And there's a lot of stuff that comes out where, stay away from dairy, stay away from this, stay away from that. And so there's a combination like which dairy, which not, what not dairy, and so on and so forth. You talked about the fats, trans fat, those cooking oils, whatever, versus like olive oil, for example, big difference. So it's just a matter of knowledge and awareness and education. I think if everyone takes the time to research things, and hopefully like a show like this gets to more people and people can share it, and people can actually learn some basics from experts such as yourself to just understand what's happening to their body and what simple things and changes they can do to make a difference. Now, that takes us to lifestyle, because I think a lot of this now that I'm mentioning is leading us to just a mindset shift and really healthy lifestyle, habits or changes. So what would be your, I guess, ideal change and shift for someone that's going from perimenopause to postmenopause stages, and even early on, if they can get in a lifestyle early on enough to get them better, that would be even ideal. What would you say?
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Lifestyle is huge, because you can obviously change your nutrition. You have to want to do that. You have to be motivated to do that. But the whole lifestyle and how you lead your life is really very, very crucial. Absolutely, you've got to have all the pieces together. The one top thing that when we talk about lifestyle that I would say to people, which is a huge problem in society, is stress. And I know we're all sick of hearing about stress, aren't we? Manage stress. Yeah, what does that mean? People have busy lives, and they've got stressful jobs and families and young children, and they don't have any time for themselves. But you really have to manage stress, because stress is so detrimental to health. And as you go into perimenopause and menopause, you can't handle stress like you used to. You can start to feel overwhelmed, because normally when you're 45 plus, you've probably got a career, you maybe got children at home, you maybe have parents that are slightly older that need care, to care for. So there's a lot going on in your life. So you really have to manage stress, and the whole stress cycle, with stress hormones, cortisol in particular. If you're suffering from chronic stress, which a lot of people in society are these days, the cortisol levels in your blood, they trigger off so many different things, and they really don't help with the menopausal symptoms. Weight gain, for example, cortisol you will store fat if you have cortisol. If you're chronically stressed, it's very, very difficult to lose weight if you're suffering from chronic stress. So it's managing stress, and how do you do that? It's very individual, but you really have to sit down and want to do it. I can give you the support and the information, but you have to want to do it. And it doesn't have to be like huge things. Great, yoga, meditation, fantastic if you can do them. But the majority of people that I see, if I said to them, okay, you've got to meditate for 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day, they'd be like, that's not happening. I can't do that. That's just, it will create another stress for me in my life. Something as simple as going for I say to you, okay, just give me 5 minutes in your day. Go outside and sit in the garden, or sit looking out of a window with a glass of water or a cup of tea or whatever, and just breathe. Breathing is something that we really, there's so many different breathing techniques that are fantastic for reducing stress. It's very difficult to become stressed if you're deep breathing, because basically breathing deeply is telling your body that everything's okay. So you don't release, you don't go into that stress cycle. Things like just sitting down and reading a book in the evening rather than going on a Netflix binge, or just doing something calm for yourself, closing your eyes at your desk for 5 minutes and breathing. If you have got time to meditate and do yoga and go for a 20-minute walk, then that's fantastic. But, small steps. You don't have to do everything at once, but really finding something that works for you to manage stress. Because the majority of people these days are suffering from stress, and it is so detrimental to your health long term. And it really, like I say, triggers off all these menopausal symptoms. If you manage stress, you will see a difference in your health. Definitely. Just it's that like self-care, isn't it? It's really taking that and making sure that you have time for yourself and not feeling selfish. It's okay to look after yourself. I tend to always take like Sundays off. Sundays is a day where, I don't do any work. I don't answer emails. You just have that time to yourself and with your family and being outside and doing what makes you happy, really. It's very different, isn't it, for everyone? So stress is a huge thing for lifestyle. And sleep, sleep hygiene, again, that is something that can be really affected during perimenopause and menopause. And if you're not being able to sleep, or you're waking up in the early hours of the morning, it affects everything. I mean, you're not happy, are you? The next day you're going to be tired. The whole lack of sleep, there's many things that happen. One of them is that you crave carbohydrates, preferably really refined, sugary carbohydrates that will give you that blood sugar kick because you want energy. It will make your menopausal symptoms worse. So sleep is, as we know now, there's so much research done on sleep, it's so crucial for how we are. So really working on that with thinking about what you do, 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. If you're staring at your phone or on your computer or television, that's stimulating. Really try to do something more relaxing, like just having a chat with your family or reading a book or just doing something calming, and really avoiding stimulating like caffeine and stimulating foods, like we talk about energy drinks. Try not to eat for a couple of hours before you go to bed. There's many things with sleep hygiene. You could do a whole podcast on that.
I know. Listen, Alison, you've covered almost every single angle that makes a difference for life. And by the way, I think this is just for general, but I mean more specific to women going through the peri and through menopause in general. But some of this stuff is actually advice that I think everybody should listen to. I mean, stress is a killer. I mean, literally, people take it to the extreme, and it's affecting us because of the lifestyles we carry these days, and we tend to have. So thank you, I mean, for bringing that up. I mean, sleep is also, a big deal, to your point with the phones and stuff, TVs, people actually are a little wired up to these things until the last minute, and then they can't shut down. So all these behavioral changes that can make a difference are easy to actually affect, but I think we're addicted to some of these things, and just transiting back to the basics and sometimes like giving up some of this behavior that we've been so accustomed to over the years. I mean, we make a joke back in the days, TV was closed, started and ended at a certain time, and you only had a certain amount of, time you can watch it. Now it's everything, thousands of channels, and now you carry it with you everywhere. I mean, you don't need the TV. You have phones, and just go to TikTok and you never stop.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
It is crazy, right? And so it's unfortunate, but really, I know we're coming to the end of the show, but really, Alison, I think you've gone through the definition of what menopause is, perimenopause, the changes, the metabolism stuff, the impact of all the stuff, nutrition, lifestyle, health, all this stuff is key for people. And if you're listening or watching right now, just rewind this and just sink in some of the advice from Alison. I think if you apply some of these changes in life, or at least be aware, you're going to see a shift. You're going to live a healthier and happier life. But also, I want to just highlight Alison here. I mean, she does work all over the world, and she can guide people. And if you have a question or have a concern, or you feel like you need some assistance to guide yourself, I'm assuming, Alison, you can consult with people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like you say, I have a online clinic, so I work with clients from all over the world, and I'm more than happy if anyone's got any questions or wants to have a chat with me. Then absolutely, the best way is to get me through my website. So yeah, absolutely, it'd be a pleasure to talk to anyone.
Well, listen, you have it, Alison. I will have the actual link of your website on the description of the show. So people, please feel free to touch, and click on it and go to her site, figure out, all the things that she has available for you. Alison, I know you're going to do a great job with folks, and hopefully, they're going to see a difference in their life and really transit, nicely and smoothly throughout this whole shift of life, maybe even without feeling the difference if they actually do it correctly with you. So I wanted to thank you for the time. But just before we close, any last advice, for our folks on today's show?
Yeah, I think I would just like to say, about mindset is that I know this is easier said than done, but really try to have a positive mindset when you go into perimenopause and menopause, because it's a totally natural process, and don't fight it. Just accept it and be positive and prioritize yourself. And realize that, this is just a totally natural life phase. It's not something, if you get yourself worked up about it and all negative about it, it will basically just make it even worse. So look after yourself, because, you're worth it.
I love it. Keyword, you're worth it. And take it for whatever it's worth. That's a big concept right there. Alison, thank you so much for being with us today and for taking the time, across from the Atlantic, and helping people across the world here, all over the globe, actually watching and listening, to have at least an understanding of what menopause is and how to really live through it nice and happy and just carry on a very healthy life, for as long as you live. And that's really the help that we need, just to be able to live a happier life, bottom line. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It is my pleasure. And folks, thank you for being with us, for watching, for listening. And we'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic, new guest. Bye for now.